Hello, this is going to be a video tutorial on Unit 2, Activity 3. And so this activity is going to focus on two main topics. One is the subgenres of horror. So you're going to need to understand what a moral allegory, a psychological horror, and the fantastic are. They're different types of scary stories. And you'll find examples of each one here. And what you'll eventually have to do is in the assignment in this activity, you're going to have to read a scary story, and you'll have to tell me which one of these subgenres it fits under. So that's the first major topic. Make sure you're comfortable with the three subgenres of horror. Second, we're going to focus on short story elements. So short story elements is something that's covered in every English class, or at least every high school English class pretty much. And if you've done the grade 11 English course recently, this should be fairly familiar to you. But just in case, there's a little bit of a review that I've put in here. And it's going to focus on 5 different elements of stories. So that's character, plot, setting, point of view, and theme. You're going to need to know these 5 elements of stories, not just in this activity, but in future activities and in just about any English course you would ever take. You're going to be expected to be able to read a story or read a novel and break down the character, plot, setting, point of view, and theme. So what I've provided you here is a review sheet here, and if you open it up, it'll look like this right here. And it'll just go over the 5 elements. So the first page will cover the different ways that we can break down character. I would focus on this bit right here, characterization, because in your assignment in this activity, you're going to have to be able to describe characters. So you're going to have to know how a character is developed in a story. Secondly, it'll look at plot, and it'll go through the basic plot structure. But for our purposes, the most important bit is going to be right here, the types of conflict. So it's important that you know the different types of conflict that can pop up in a story. You'll see some examples of each type right here. Again, in your assignment this activity, you're going to have to read a story and tell me the different types of conflict in that story. In terms of setting, you'll need to be able to identify location and time period, which is always important with setting. But for me, the most important part of setting is right here, atmosphere and mood. And it's important that you understand how atmosphere and mood work together in a story. So the atmosphere describes the physical environment of a scene. So is it hot? Is it cold? Is it day? Is it night? Is it quiet? Is it noisy? So the idea with atmosphere is just taking from the story what you're given. What does it physically say in the story when it's describing the scene? What is the physical environment? Whereas mood is the feelings and emotions that are created by the atmosphere. So if you have a nice sunny day on a beach, if that's your atmosphere, well then your mood is probably going to be relaxing. Right? So the atmosphere creates the mood. And you're going to have to show me that you can take a scene from a story and break down the atmosphere and mood. In terms of point of view, it's important that you understand the difference between a first person and a third person story. And again, in this activity, you're going to have to look at a story and tell me, is it a first person or a third person story? And then explain to me a little bit about how that impacts how the story is told. So it's important you know the difference between first and third person. And then finally, theme. And theme might be the most important part of a story. It's the message or the lesson or the value that the story is trying to present to the reader. And so it'll be important that you can read a story and tell me what are the messages that the author is trying to give to the reader. So if you go through these 5 elements, and this is just a quick review of each of the 5 elements, if you like, you can certainly go online and do some more research on story elements as well. But it'll be important that you know the basics of what makes up a story. Okay. With that said, the next part of the content page will be using graphic organizers when reading. And so it will suggest here that you can use a graphic organizer. In this case, I read, I think, therefore is a type of graphic organizer. And what they're going to ask you to do is they're going to ask you to use an I read, I think, therefore graphic organizer when you read a short story. And so you can download the graphic organizer here, and this is what it looks like. And so the theory is you read a story and you just jot down points. This is just rough work. This is just notes. You just jot down points while you're reading about what you're reading. So what is happening? Okay. Also, while you're reading, if you have any observations or anything that grabs your attention that makes you think a little bit, jot down your thoughts while you're reading. What do you think the main character is going to do at the end of the story? What do you think that the character is thinking, or what is their motives when they're acting in the story? So just this is your observations in terms of what do you think. And then lastly, therefore, and you can kind of do this when you're done the story, therefore, what did you learn from the story, and what was the ultimate outcome of the story, right? So this is just a real simple graphic organizer that helps you when you're reading, particularly when you're reading short stories. Okay. And so you're going to take this graphic organizer and you're going to read one of these 3 stories and fill in that graphic organizer. So it's your choice. You don't have to read all 3 of these. All 3 are classic scary stories. And just choose one. There's a little explanation of each one here. So you can take a look at all 3 if you like, and then read a little bit of each and then decide which one's best for you. But when you click on the link for each story, you'll see that you can both read the story and listen to the story. So in this case, you've got the story here and you can read through the entire story. But you can also listen. You can listen to the story being read at a fast pace or at a slow pace, and you can follow along and read while you're listening as well too. And that goes for the second story, The Lottery, and the third story, A Sound of Thunder as well. You can both read and listen to them. So choose one of these 3. Fill out the the I read, I think, therefore graphic organizer, just so that you can make rough notes. And then move on to the assignment where you're going to have to look at the story that you read in more detail. And so if we click down here on assignment, it says, after completing the I read, I think, therefore graphic organizer in the content section, you should have a good understanding of the short story you read. So again, you just have to choose one of those 3 short stories. You don't need to read and analyze all 3. But what you're going to do for our assignment is you're going to download something called the Horror Short Story Chart. And this is what it's going to look like. But when you download it, we can see it right here. And you're just going to fill in all 6 of these columns. And so you'll notice that each column deals with one of the story elements that we talked about in the content. So you'll have to fully describe 2 of the main characters. So give me specific details, describe the personality of 2 characters in the story. You're going to have to identify 2 types of conflict in the story and provide examples that support that conflict. So you could say that there is character versus character conflict in the story, and then give me an example of that. Or you could say there's character versus self conflict, and then give me an example of that. But make sure you identify 2 types of conflict and back each up with an example. You're going to identify the major theme in the story. So fully explain the main message of the story. Provide supporting detail from the story. So what is the message that the author is trying to send in this story? Atmosphere and mood. Choose one scene. If the story moves around a lot, the atmosphere and mood can change. So I just want you to choose one scene or one location in the story, and then describe that scene's atmosphere, so the physical environment, and mood, the emotions. Make sure you clearly identify which is which, right? You don't want to try to blend the atmosphere and mood into one sentence, because then how do I know that you know which one is atmosphere and which one is mood? So the easiest way to do this would be like this. Something like atmosphere and then describe the atmosphere. Mood and then describe the mood. But keep them separate. They, of course, go together. The atmosphere, the physical environment, creates the mood or the emotions in the scene. But you want to show me that you can break them into two. Point of view, you're going to tell me what type of point of view is used in the story. Is it first person? Is it third person? And then this is the tricky part of the question. How do you think that affects how the story is told? If a story is first or third person, it kind of changes the way the story is told and how we understand the characters and the events. And then lastly, the subgenre of horror. So identify which subgenre best fits this story. And if we go back to the content, remember there's three choices here. You can choose moral allegory, psychological horror, or the fantastic. So which one of those best fits the one story that you read? Okay. So once you've completed this chart right here, you've done the assignment for the week, and you can submit your answers to the Dropbox here. If you have any questions, please let me know.